and welcome home. In this podcast, we venture into what it means to be a leader in this new world. Human, flawed but working on things, and forever changed by using our intuition to guide us. I'm Adelina East, founder of Transformational Healing and mentor to those running soul-based businesses. Join me to receive transformational healing, tips to dive more deeply into your unique spiritual gifts, and to hear great conversations with other entrepreneurs in spirit. Let's get started. Hi, everybody. Welcome back to the Cosmic Leadership Podcast. I'm your host, Adelina East. I am an EMDR therapist. I work with internal family systems, or IFS therapy, as well as my own modality, transformational healing, to help people learn to heal themselves, something I feel we are all capable of with the right guides. I'm so excited to be with you today. I've been waiting for this guest for so long, and so have all of you. She comes by very popular request. This is Dr. Aumatma, and I first learned of her from all of you. All of you wrote in and told me about her wonderful work, and I recently learned that we also both used to live in California. Dr. Aumatma is a naturopathic doctor and board-certified fellow of Naturopathic Endocrinology. She's an award-winning speaker on women's health and fertility, and she's the creator of the Restorative Fertility System, the four-step process to improving fertility and empowering couples to have a healthy baby. She's on a mission to bring healthier babies into this world and currently trains doctors to take a more holistic approach to fertility in their practices, which, oh my gosh, we all really need. Her expertise is featured in local and national media such as ABC, Fox, CBS, KTLA, MindBodyGreen, and The Bump. Support for fertility can also be found through her website and through her Instagram, which we will link to below in the show notes. Hey, Dr. Aumatma.
Hey, Adelina. Nice to see you. Nice
to see you.
Good to be here.
I'm so happy you're here. We desperately need your help. So I work mainly with women and people who identify as women. And so many of our listeners wrote in and said that we really needed to have a fertility expert, but someone who approaches it holistically in the way that you do. And so I kept hearing your name coming up over and over again. I was like, oh, I would love to have her on the podcast. Let's see when she's free. And I feel so lucky to get to talk to you today.
Oh, that's so sweet. Gosh, yeah, I'm honored. I'm honored to be here.
Thank you. Can you tell us a little bit about what brought you to this field of work? It's so specialized.
Yeah, absolutely. So I was married to this man who wanted to have babies, and this was in my early 30s. And I was getting upon that age where they say, fertility drops off of a cliff, you're going to be screwed. Good luck to you. And so I was in that zone of, I'm with this person, we're already married. And literally every time he mentioned babies, my uterus would be like, no. Oh. And I was like, what? I'm so confused. And after we got married, my periods went haywire. I was in pain all the time. I was like, this just doesn't make sense. My body is really revolting to something. Yes. And I need to figure out what that is before I say yes to having a child with someone. Yeah. And at the same time, we had been this was a 10-year relationship. So it was it wasn't easy to just be like, oh yeah, sure. We're just going to part ways. And I'm going to spend another 10 years finding the right person and then having a child. And maybe it will never happen. So all of these things were running in the back where I was like, okay, I have to kind of figure out what I can do for myself to support my fertility. And what I realized, I essentially locked myself in a room for 9 months because I was like, I need to figure this out. Leave me alone. I don't want to talk to anybody. I don't want to do anything. I'm just going to figure this out. Yeah. And what finally helped me break free from the relationship, but also from my own, what I had learned in medical school, which was this myth around 35, is that it was literally a myth, that it was created in the 1800s in churches, not in science. and the churches were noticing that women were not coming in to get their children baptized after they turned 35. So they presumed that, oh, fertility must just end at 35 because children are not getting baptized after that. Uh, so that is where that myth comes from. And to me, like, I call it a myth
Yeah.
because it's never been proven by science. No one has questioned this. There are some
Wow.
very small studies that have come out in the last like 3 to 5 years that are
Okay.
questioning this, but they're so small scale. So when you talk
Wow.
to a fertility doctor that is more conventional than myself, they will say, well, there's no research. Like, what are you talking about? There's no proof that fertility doesn't drop off of a cliff at 35. And I'm like, well, you're making a big assumption
That is a big
that was
assumption.
never based in science. Like, there's no data to prove that what you're saying is true.
Yeah.
So, but for me, like, really just understanding that and realizing, like, if that's a myth, then what else falls apart? And
My God,
for me, like,
everything.
literally everything fell apart, right? Like, after that point, you're like, well, so you're telling me I can't do anything about my fertility? Well, that must not be true.
Hmm.
And you're telling me, like, my hormones are just going to get more and more screwed up, and I'm going to be in perimenopause by the time I'm 35 or 40. Like, all
Hmm.
of these things kind of break down when you take that myth. It's like the foundation of everything that we believe. And if that falls
Yes.
apart, there's no foundation. So
Yes.
literally all the pegs fall. And that's kind of so as I was doing that research and I was talking about what I was finding,
Hmm.
women were like, "Oh my God, you can help me with my fertility." I'm like, "No, dude, this is just research. Like, I'm just in this for myself.
Yeah.
Like, this is not the plan, right? I am not
Yeah.
doing fertility forever." And like, people just, women just wouldn't stop coming to me. And
Great.
finally, I was like, okay, if this is what I'm meant to do, show me a sign. And the universe is like, didn't I already give you that sign? But
Right.
okay, sure, here's another one. So that week that I asked for a sign, I had 3 women out of nowhere that were like, "Hey, can you help me with getting pregnant?" And the first two, I was like, "No." By the time number 3 came around, I was like, "Okay, yeah, this is definitely a sign." So I said to her,
Wow.
I've never done this before. I don't have any success stories.
Okay.
I've been in practice for a long time, but I've literally never helped anyone with fertility. And this is not going to be free. Like, I'm actually going to charge
Yeah.
you money for this.
Yeah.
And I don't know if we can help you. I have some theories about what we can do, but figure it out. See if your spirit like moves you to work with me. And she called me back Monday morning and was like, "You're the cuckooest doctor that I've ever talked to, but I'm really sure that you're going to help me."
Great.
And I was like, "Oh crap. Okay." So it was, I resisted it a lot. And
Yeah.
I kind of tend to resist the universe in my
Hmm.
life, but usually it is the right thing. It's just like I need to be coaxed into it sometimes. And I
Yeah.
know like a lot of people listening are probably relating to that. Is like
Hmm.
your intuition, your inner wisdom is guiding you in so many ways. And we're often not listening. And
True.
whenever we can listen, then it's guiding us towards often what our purpose is, or who we should be with, or when we should have a baby. All of those questions like become a lot clearer
Hmm.
when we can listen to our intuition and follow it.
I love that story so much. I find so much resonance with that. So, I completely relate to the resisting the universe part.
You too?
Uh, oh, absolutely. I am a therapist now, but I started out working for the UN and I worked all over the world, and it was a beautiful and amazing career working with women. But my body literally started to revolt.
Mm.
I was working in this very moldy basement, and I'd been working in moldy environments all the way along, and all of a sudden my body just shut down. I wouldn't stop working to the point that I was taking my wheelchair on the subway from Brooklyn to Manhattan to get to headquarters and then taking my wheelchair home. And I would just collapse on the couch. I could not move. And finally, my body just completely shut down. I couldn't get up.
Mm,
And
mm.
so I had to do that inner work, like you talked about, lock yourself in a room and figure it out. And I figured out that I was supposed to do this instead.
Mm,
But I resisted for a very long time. I
yeah.
relate.
Yeah. Gosh. Gosh, the things that we resist. I aim to like listen more,
Hmm.
and sometimes we we need the support of other people to listen, like especially when it comes to our bodies, like what I was saying about my ex and the way that my body was responding to him, like that should have
Hmm.
been a sign. That should have been a red
Yeah.
flag like way earlier in the relationship. But it was not until he started talking about children that it was really like it was so obvious. It was just like,
Yeah.
no, there's
That
no
was not
more.
the
Like we're
one.
not doing this.
Hmm.
Um and thank God. Thank God for that. Like it would have been a horrendous relationship had we stayed together and had a child. So like every day I see my child and I'm like, "Oh, thank God I didn't have a child with the wrong person." Which is crazy, but that's
There's
I
nothing
feel
crazy
like
about it. Nothing crazy about it. You listened to your intuition and you found the right person, I assume. You have a
Mhm.
new partner?
Yeah. Yeah,
Son?
yeah. 10
Yeah.
years with my current, or 12 years we've been together, and our child's 6. So, yeah,
Yay.
it's been a long time.
Good for you.
Yeah.
So, I mean, okay, I try really hard to not be political on this podcast because I want it to be very open for
Mhm.
everyone and I want everyone
Mhm.
to be able to learn here. But I have to say, you're rocking my world, Dr. Aumatma, with the fact that our fertility does not drop off after 35. All of that information came from churches, which
Yes.
traditionally support the patriarchy, right?
Mhm.
Like that is the
Mhm.
cornerstone of patriarchy. So no wonder they want us to all be barefoot and pregnant early in life. So we can't really get careers started. Men maintain their power structure, and we just
Mhm.
have to raise children seemingly forever.
Mm.
So
I've
it
never thought
doesn't
about it that way. Thank
really.
you. It's not occurred to me that way, but yes,
Oh
awesome.
my gosh.
That
Okay,
makes a
well,
lot of sense.
right? I think I grew up in a cult and it was very patriarchal. And so I think
Oh,
I
wow.
kind of look at everything that way. I'm like, okay,
Okay.
you're trying to tell me what to do. Why do you want to keep me down? Oh, so you can maintain power. Why do you want me to not have this information? Oh, because you need to maintain power. So I'm not saying
Mm,
that's exactly how it went down. I do know that I have
mhm.
a predilection to thinking that way, but it makes perfect sense to me. Like,
It does,
the time
yeah.
to start your careers when you're young and go to school as much as you can, learn as much as you can, get things started. And then once you've got things started, you can take a little time off to have a baby and come
Mhm,
back and still continue to achieve, right? I
mhm.
think it's so, so hard to like start at 35 or 40.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. So much truth to that.
So, what else did you discover during these 9 months of figuring it out?
Gosh, so much. So,
Okay,
uh,
let's dig in.
the second piece of what was really strong, that was like, part of my growth and learning, was what turned into this 4-step process. So the 4 steps are reveal, remove, rebalance, receive.
Okay.
And it is a mind, body, spirit approach to conception and honestly life. Um,
Yay! That's genius. Tell us all about it.
so reveal is a lot around what is happening under the surface, because we see on the surface women are told unexplained infertility. It's your age. I've had 32-year-olds being told it's your age.
I
That's why you're
know.
not getting pregnant. Um, PCOS, endometriosis. There's so many like labels that get put on women, especially in the fertility world. And a lot of it pre-fertility, before you're trying to conceive, a lot of that is okay, well, the solution is birth control, just take birth control. And then they get off of birth control because they're trying to get pregnant and they still have all of the symptoms, all of the things that were happening before they got on birth control, sometimes worse, right?
Mhm.
Like the endometriosis pain will be worse. PCOS gets worse. So a lot of the things that birth control is supposedly solving is just getting pushed off into the time period where you're really wanting to have a baby and you think that you're going to get off of birth control, you're going to get pregnant. It doesn't happen. And you're wondering, what the heck? Why isn't it happening? What's wrong with
Yeah.
me? So, reveal is really about understanding what's under all of that. So, there are about 15 different root causes that I think are present in about 95% of couples that are going through fertility struggle.
Do you ever feel like you're stuck and you're not quite sure what to do next? Do you ever feel like maybe the best times of your life might be behind you and you're not sure where to go from here? I completely understand. I work with a lot of people in the same situation. If you are going through this sort of life transition time, I'm here to help. I find that with a lot of my clients, the life transition time overlaps with a lot of other things: parents aging, raising children, switching careers, relationship changes, all of those kinds of things. I believe in the ability of all of us to transition through these things with ease and with grace if you have the right guide. I am so happy to work with you through any and all of these things. I find that a lot of trauma healing can happen during this time because we start to look at how that has impacted our lives so far. So, if you're starting to notice yourself going through changes, wanting to see more change in your life, and wanting to let go of these older traumas, check out my website. We're going to include the link below. You can book just a single session with me to start if that feels right for you, either using EMDR or internal family systems or IFS therapy, also called parts work. Or you can book a transformational healing session, my own modality, to try to work through whatever's going on a spiritual, mental, emotional, and physical level all at the same time. I really recommend this. I find it's the fastest way through. But of course, this is up to you, and I have lots of different options to suit every need. I would love to walk with you through this transition time. I hope to hear from you soon.
And I say couples because men, this was the other piece of it, is like men are often put on the back burner of
Mm-hmm.
like, you're just a sperm donor. It doesn't matter. You're not the important thing here. We're just
Right.
going to focus on the woman. It's the woman's fault. Right.
Mm-hmm.
And and again, like to your point, more patriarchy there. But
Mm-hmm.
uh, so like everything gets focused on the women. But in reality, it's the interaction between the two. So it's not just that your hormones are out of whack. It's not just that your thyroid is not functioning well. It's not just whatever, but it's
Mm-hmm.
also the fact that your partner has these low grade things going on that no one is testing for, no one
Mm-hmm.
is looking at, and no one's even testing his sperm till 3 years of infertility. Like,
Right.
what? That makes no sense whatsoever.
Right.
So there is it'll kind of like inherent bias in the way that we approach fertility, which is mostly the female. It's her fault. How do we fix it?
Always.
Fix
Yeah.
her.
Mm-hmm.
Um, so reveal is the first step. Remove is a lot of getting rid of toxins that are so prominent in our environment. There are, I would say, the majority of us, including myself, that knows all the things. And
Mm-hmm.
still, I know that there is a small amount of toxins still present in my life that I can't get rid of.
Right.
So we really focus on getting rid of the toxins. And I have a book, like an ebook that you can download. It's free. We are happy to share it with your audience.
Yay.
Um,
Great.
the goal of that is just like, these are things you can do on your own before you even come see me, right? Like you don't need a specialist to get rid of toxins in your life.
Yeah.
Uh, so getting rid of toxins, and then specifically when we're working with people, we're focused on, okay, let's identify if there are toxins that maybe are going under the radar or
Hmm.
things that are not necessarily considered toxins that are toxins for you. For
Hmm.
example, if someone has Hashimoto's, which is like an autoimmune thyroid condition, which a lot of people have,
Hmm.
gets missed often.
Hmm.
So in the reveal phase, we might have figured out that, oh, we have a patient right now who her antibodies are 6,000, which is like ridiculously
Yes.
high.
Yes.
Um, and her, like, she has not been assessed or diagnosed with this before.
Hmm.
So we had to tell her, like, eesh, your immune system's going crazy.
Yeah.
And if that's the case, then iodine is actually toxic for that
For
person's
you.
body.
Yes.
Yes. And iodine is hidden in things like dough conditioners. So you eat, it's not necessarily just the gluten, it's dough has conditioners that they use in commercial baking to make bread really delicious or something. I have no idea what
Hmm.
it does, but we have to remove it in order to get rid of this like hidden source of iodine that's then affecting her immune system and thyroid function. So
Right.
really like that remove phase is, what are the things that are in your way that are blocking your ability to get pregnant and stay pregnant?
Okay. I have
So that's
questions already. Can I ask questions?
yes, you can ask questions.
So you've already said something. I am the queen of cleanses. Let me just say, I was
Mm,
exposed to every pesticide known to man when I worked
mm,
overseas.
mhm,
And it's important there because we all had dengue and malaria fully half the time. Um, but because of all those pesticides, I then, I also lived in mold over there. Then I came back here and worked in mold and lived in
mhm.
mold. And so I went through $100,000 of medical treatment to get those toxins out of my body.
Wow.
Like, and it's continual. I still spend 4 days a week in the sauna. I use a red light on my thyroid. I do all the
Mhm.
things. This dough conditioner thing, I have never heard that in my life. Not that I eat a ton of bread, but I'm gluten free. I feel like I eat the rainbow of colors of vegetables every single
Mhm,
day.
mhm.
Dough conditioners? Come on. What are the
Yeah,
other like
isn't that
weird
crazy?
off the wall things that we should be removing?
Hmm. Hmm. What are other weird? So I like iodine and thyroid is like the biggest one that's so hidden.
It is.
And iodine is in a lot of stuff that you would not expect. So there is a whole camp of doctors that is like, iodine is good for you. You have thyroid issues, take iodine, right? Take
Yes.
kelp, take iodine,
I've
make it
heard
high
it.
doses. On
Hmm.
the opposite side, you have research. And
Okay.
I believe that there's a good body of research that actually is suggesting that iodine is good in appropriate doses. But if you think you're getting iodine from, let's say, salt, you have iodized salt,
Yeah.
but you're also getting it in 10 different things that you didn't know about and aren't
Right.
accounting for, you're actually getting way higher levels than you like are calculating for yourself, and are
Wow.
being exposed to a lot more than you think you should be.
Okay.
And then the other problem with iodine is there's no actual test that is accurate enough to figure out if you have a high or low amount.
Okay.
So it's this like really weird balance. So what we do with it is just like, if you have antibodies to your thyroid, we're giving you a list. Like, here's all the sources of hidden iodine.
Wow.
Similarly, yeah. and
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 that's
it's
if
in like
you're
the most random
hypo.
things.
That's like if you're
You could be
hypo or
hypo or
hyper,
you could be either. You could
either.
be
Okay.
hypo or hyper, but if you have antibodies to your thyroid, then so
You get the
Hashimoto's
list.
and Graves, you're both of those are autoimmune.
Yeah.
And it's the autoimmune factor that I think is the most sensitive to these like excess iodine stores that are
Wow.
coming in from random places.
Okay.
Other things, I think you're probably aware of this, but I think a lot of people are unaware about the phthalates that are hidden in all of the fragrances
Mm-hmm.
that are around us. All the things that make our home smell good, make our car smell good, make
Yeah.
our body smell good.
Right.
Those types of things are going to impact our hormones in a really significant way. Phthalates are probably the highest up on my list of things to
Okay.
think about if you're trying to conceive for men and women.
Yeah.
The other one is gonna be glyphosate, which is
Oh
another
my God.
one that we don't often think about. You're super aware because 'cause you're,
I'm
like, in
super
the
into anti-glyphosate. I'm actually part of a group that does activism to try to end
Oh, heck
glyphosate.
yes.
Yeah.
Yes,
Yeah.
yeah, so I'm speaking your language, but
Yes.
for those who are not aware of glyphosate, so glyphosate is the most it's basically Roundup. It's getting
Hmm.
sprayed on all kinds of plants. One of the plants that's predominantly sprayed with glyphosate is cotton. Cotton turns into pads and tampons that you put directly into your reproductive area.
Hmm.
And glyphosate, we know from studies in on gut health that glyphosate kills the microbiome.
Yeah.
So if it kills the gut microbiome, it also kills the vaginal microbiome.
Right.
And a lot of people will come back to me and say, "But I use organic pads and tampons."
Nope.
And I say, "Okay, that might be a step better." But there are a lot of companies that are saying it's organic and it's not actually organic cotton. And then there is the, well, was this cotton grown right next to the non-organic cotton and it still has glyphosate on it because they sprayed it all the way through that area
I know.
overhead on airplanes that cannot control where the pesticide goes, right? So a lot of question marks about glyphosate, but for me, like, just looking at the reproductive lens, like, that's a huge impact on fertility directly because if we kill the good microbes that are in our vaginas and in our reproductive system, then that is going to affect the ability to conceive. Implantation, there are many studies about vaginal dysbiosis causing lower success of IVF outcomes. So now
Mhm.
you've spent $30,000 on IVF
Oh,
only to not have the amazing embryo implant
right.
because you don't have the right microbes in your vagina.
I know.
It's insane.
I
It's
know.
so insane. So like that's the kind of stuff that really gets me fired up because it is when people are spraying cotton plants, they're not thinking about women's bodies,
I know.
right? They're like, how do
Yeah.
we not have cotton plants that have bugs because we're going to turn this into clothes? No
Hmm.
one is thinking cotton is turning into reproductive feminine products
I
that
know.
are going to have such a deep impact on our fertility. So,
And
yeah.
this is such a touchy area too, because for conscious consumers like me who are like, okay, I really need to use organic, I have horrible gut wrenching endometriosis.
Mm,
And I have done, I thought everything that I could possibly do, but now I learn about the dough thing with iodine. There's still some things to try.
yeah.
Uh, but so for a while, I started using a certain kind of pad that was labeled organic.
Mhm.
And then I was talking to my endometriosis specialist about it, who's amazing at all of this stuff. And she said, "Oh, you cannot use that brand. You
Mm.
cannot." And I said, "But it says organic right here." She's like, "Read closely." And I
Mhm.
did. And it's an organic cotton cover, but the material within the pad is not
Is not.
organic. So I was
Mhm.
basically putting glyphosate right up against my body
Yeah.
for the last 10 years. Great.
Mhm. Mhm.
Um, I found,
Did you switch it and did it help with your endometriosis pain?
unfortunately, no, because I just found that out last month.
Okay.
And I am actually enrolled in a clinical trial right now for my endo
Mm.
because I've had two surgeries and one really botched one during
Mm.
COVID.
Mm.
And we, mostly what he did was like spread it around as much as he could. So we're still trying
Oh
to
no.
figure that out. Yeah.
Oh my God.
But there's such a link between fusobacterium now and endometriosis. And so I'm
Mhm.
working on it from that angle. And
Gardnerella.
yep,
Yeah.
taking 8,000 herbs. Yes.
Yeah. It's a whole thing. But what I will say, if it's encouraging at all, is that we see, even with endo patients, we see about a 50% reduction in pain scales
Hmm.
with periods within 3 cycles of cutting out pads and tampons.
Yeah.
So
What do you recommend we use instead? The cup?
cups, yeah,
Okay.
menstrual cups are great, or organic panties, all of those alternatives are great.
Okay.
Mhm.
All right. Good to know.
Yeah, so I would be excited to hear if your pain gets better after a
Oh,
few cycles without pads.
I hope. I hope. Yes.
I hope so too, and I'm surprised when I see this, but I don't know why I'm surprised because, um, like, even for myself, pain got significantly better with periods, from stopping the use of tampons.
Yeah.
Um,
Tampons.
yeah, yeah.
Agreed.
So,
Yeah.
yeah. So I think it's for me, it's exciting when you do make that shift, and
Mm.
even if it gets only a little bit better, it's like, okay, well, at least it's a little bit better, right? And
Right.
that's just by making one small shift that
Right.
doesn't have to do with taking more supplements or herbs.
Right.
Yeah.
What's your favorite cup? Do you have a favorite brand?
Um, I don't remember the name of it. I don't
Okay.
remember.
All right.
I bought it, it's been a while. It's been a
Yeah.
while. So I just have no idea what it is.
Okay.
But the warning, I used to love there was one that had a ring so you could like
Hmm.
stick your finger in it and pull it out. That was awesome.
Yeah.
But I think they stopped making it. So I haven't seen
Oh,
it in a while. So I had to
okay.
switch to something else. Um, but I really would encourage making sure that it's not plastic because there are these like cups that are now disposable.
I
I'm
know.
like,
Yeah.
yay, great. So
Yeah.
instead of glyphosate, let's put plastic into our bodies.
I know.
Awesome.
I know.
Um, so just make sure it's latex, medical
Yeah.
grade, or not latex, silicone. Silicone is what we want.
Medical grade
Um,
silicone.
yeah, yeah.
Okay. Okay. Or organic panties like
Or
that.
pennies, yeah.
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 There's one brand called Organic that's spelled NYC at the back of it. And
Oh,
those
okay.
are through and through organic pads.
Mm,
I don't know if you've
okay,
seen them or not,
cool. No, I have not seen them.
but okay.
But yes, any alternative that is
Yes. Yeah.
not
Okay.
destroying the reproductive microbiome is
Right.
awesome.
That would be better.
Yeah.
Okay. So we have remove, and then what
Yep.
comes after that?
Rebalance. So,
Okay.
that's step 3 is gonna be rebalance. And rebalance is, let's address all of the underlying factors that we revealed.
Okay.
So maybe it's thyroid, maybe it's adrenals, maybe it's endometriosis, but specifically like, oh, you have immune aspects, inflammatory aspects. Let's address all of these underlying things that have
Hmm.
to do with how your body is responding to what's happening in your body.
Yeah.
Um, so that's usually what we do in the rebalance phase. And then the receive is probably my favorite phase, which is more like I call it the woo-woo. There's actually lots of science behind it,
Yeah.
but it's all about how our mental, emotional, and spiritual bodies are responding and in relationship to the physical.
Yeah.
So if we are stressed out, for example, like who's not stressed out,
Yeah.
then that stress is impacting our fertility, but it's not it's not just I'm stressed and I need to go live in a bubble, or I'm
Yeah.
stressed and I need to quit my job.
Yeah.
It's more like undoing some of the old traumas and the old like the stories that we made up about our world
Mm-hmm.
often when we were young, right?
Yep.
Like I have to carry the whole world on my shoulders because
Mm-hmm.
my parent is not doing it, or things that are something that we're not thinking about, but it shows up as type A control
Right.
OCD behavior. Yes.
Yes. For those of you not watching the podcast, but listening to the podcast, I'm raising my hand because, yes, that has been my struggle. Yes.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah, and it's a lot of us that do are like badasses in the world, that are doing amazing work in the world, that are also underlying recovering type A's.
Oh,
And
yes.
a lot of that, like I say this for myself, like being type A has got me to where I am, but it's
Mm-hmm.
also the reason that I had all of the like kind of crashes that I have in my life, and
Mm-hmm.
the like wake up calls of illness and
Right.
like, what are you doing with yourself? What are you doing with your life?
Yeah.
Like those are also stemming from this type A, I would say even like masculine
Mm-hmm.
energy
Mm-hmm.
that I have cultivated more of than the feminine.
Right.
So we like I what I see very clearly in our clients is that when they shift this energy, when they shift from this like type A needing to control everything, like trying to control when they're going to ovulate and when they're going to have
Mm-hmm.
sex and when they're like that
Mm-hmm.
to actually being able to receive, to be in
Mm-hmm.
that state that's open and receptive to
Right.
a baby, then it gets way easier to conceive. And
Yes.
yeah, so that's our process. And the receive is like I love it because it's so magical. Like I've had men come back to me like, "What did you do to my wife? Where is she?" And I'm like, "Oh no, what happened? She's not controlling me anymore. What's going on?" I'm like, "Oh, do you want her to be controlling you?" They're like, "No, no, no, it's great. It's great. Just give me a gallon of whatever you gave her." So, yeah, it's really awesome when it happens and the men can feel it very quickly because they're like, "Oh, yeah,
Mm-hmm.
I like this like soft, receptive human that
Yeah.
was this way when I was dating, and then, she changed into the type A fanatic."
Mm-hmm.
It's
I
just
think it
like,
happens to so many of us. And
yeah.
I think it's
Yeah.
really extremely culturally encouraged.
Mhm.
Um, I have always been type A and
Mhm.
on top of everything. And that's how I became so successful in my career.
Mhm.
But like you, I also got to a point where I realized I was operating as a superhuman.
Mhm.
And there's no way to keep that up throughout your whole
Mhm.
life. And also,
Nope.
as a therapist, I work with so many folks who have major control issues. I also have major control issues. And there
Mhm.
is something to be said for the nervous system regulation that takes place after you let go of control, which is
Mhm.
the scariest thing in the whole world.
Yes.
Nobody gets that more than I do. Believe me,
Yeah.
it is terrifying. But
Yeah.
if you can do it, your nervous system can stabilize, and then you actually can be receptive to other things, not just
Hmm.
sperm, but like other amazing things in the world, amazing things that come to you instead of you hotly, aggressively pursuing, you know?
Hmm. Yep. Yep.
It's not even,
Absolutely.
I'm not even going to go with like a male female thing with that. I think that kind of goes for everybody. Like if you can really let go of control, it
Yeah.
actually brings so much to you, I think.
It's sort of there's a old tale, and I can't remember what culture it comes from, but it's like you're sticking your hand into something with a fist trying to pull it out because you're
Ooh,
like holding on to it so tight and
yeah,
it's too small to get your wrist out, but if you just let go and tip
it
the thing
comes right
over,
out.
it'll come right out, right?
I love that story. We
So
have to find out what culture that's from. It's
I
beautiful.
yeah, I get that visual so frequently. It's like, "Oh, am I, like, holding on to this thing so tightly that it's
Yeah.
not coming to me?"
Okay.
And with fertility, it's just like it's hard not to hold on, right? Like,
I
for
know.
so many women, it's like, "This is what I've wanted forever, and now that it's actually time, it's not happening. So, like, how can I not hold on to this dream, this vision?"
Mm-hmm.
And but it's like releasing the vision into the universe, and
Yeah.
if we can think of it that way, then it really, like, softens our bodies and it's like, "Oh, it's gonna come to me, like, it's
Yeah.
definitely gonna come to me. I
Yeah.
just have to release." Yeah.
I think what you're saying also is it's so important from a queer perspective also. Like I was married to a man. I lived a very heterosexual life. I came out at 40. And that was
Mm,
actually a large part of why I wasn't getting pregnant because I was not meant to be with this man because I was
wow.
queer. And I had to come to terms with that after being raised in the religious cult that I was and all of that. Took a
Wow.
lot of figuring out, Dr. Aumatma, a lot of figuring out. Um, but if you start to think about the control and the hanging on so tightly thing, I think what I've noticed in a lot of my friendships is even as, like, let's say a lesbian couple is going through IVF or two gay men are going through the process of finding a surrogate and IVF and all of those things, it can be so tempting to hang on so tightly because it's such an expensive process.
Mhm.
Um, it may be taken away from us now with our impending government. Let's see.
Yeah.
Um, but for now, it's such an expensive process. And of course, you want to control that so hard and you want to hold that fist so hard.
Mhm.
But if you're able to release, I think like miracles can even take place, you know?
Mhm. Mhm. Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. I think it's and we see those miracles every day
Mhm.
because we do fertility, right?
Yeah.
Like people that were told that they were never going to have a child of their own, that they needed an egg donor, that they were going to need extreme measures to be able to bring a child into the world. And when those people are able to get pregnant
Oh,
and then, like, go on to have babies, like,
yeah.
it is a miracle. It's like, wow, like, I see this miracle right in front of my
Yeah.
eyes,
Yeah.
and it's just amazing. It's just so beautiful that, uh, it's not me doing it, right? Like, I don't have this idea that I'm creating these lives, but the the process and the opening and the work that these women are doing in on their journeys
Mhm.
is opening this and they are receiving this gift into their lives. It's just like,
Yeah.
oh, so beautiful. Like I can't envision anything else.
And I know you very humbly say, it's not me that's doing it, but it is universal energies that came to you and were like, okay, this is your path. Teach people about this stuff. and amazing miracles will happen. And you were open to it, receptive to it, not trying to control with it. And it's happening and it's changing so many people's lives. I'm so grateful to you.
Yeah, I'm grateful for all of the people's lives that I get to touch because of this work, and all of the babies that are in this world because the parents decided, hey, we're gonna take a different approach.
Mm-hmm.
We're gonna do something different here.
Yeah.
And yeah, it's a blessing to be able to do this, and to be able to see the miracles is just so beautiful.
Oh, I love it so much. Thank you so much for being with us today, Dr. Aumatma. Is there anything else you'd like to share? Any last words?
I think I would just say that if you are actively struggling on this journey to conception and having the family that you dream of, there is hope for you yet. There are just, um, I hope that when women listen to these conversations, that they see in their own lives that something else is possible outside of what they were told,
Mm-hmm.
because so many women get stuck in that, oh, but my doctor said,
Right.
that space.
I know.
And I think I could have been one of those women, right? My medical school degree that I spent $150,000 for
Oh,
said
oh,
I could never have a child after 35. So it is it's possible. And I just want women to realize that it's possible for them. And if their doctor doesn't believe it, then find someone who does.
right. Find your person. I always tell people it is exactly the same as dating. You have to
Mhm.
find your person. Do not settle.
Mhm. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Absolutely.
You are a blessing to this world, Dr. Aumatma. Thank you so much for sharing time with us. Thank you for teaching us today. And thank you so much for what you do.
Thank you so much for having me. This was such a blessing to be able to share.
Thank you so much for listening to these important conversations about cosmic leadership and the changing needs of our times. If you enjoyed this conversation, please rate and review this podcast on Apple Podcasts or wherever you get your podcasts. You can also share it with a friend. Join our crew at Adelina East on Instagram or at Adelina East Healing on Facebook. With all the love from every dimension, Adelina.